So two of the best smartphones of 2023 so far, and two which will drain your wallet rather ruddy fast as well. The Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra and Google's fresh new Pixel 8 Pro. It's a head-to-head frantic and frenetic deathmatch. If by deathmatch you mean comparing the cameras and how well they play Genshin Impact and stuff. So should you spunk out a tasty grand on the Pixel 8 Pro or shell out even more for the Galaxy S23 Ultra? Let's see which one's best for you, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now certainly neither of these mobiles could be described as diminutive. You've got the 6.7-inch Pixel 8 Pro here on the left, the 6.8-inch Galaxy S23 Ultra to its right. Sammy's smartphone does appear to be bigger. That's only because of its rectangular design. It doesn't have the lovely rounded corners of the Pixel. In actual fact, for the dimensions, there's not much in it. The bezels are ever so slightly skinnier on the S23 Ultra, as that screen actually curves slightly at the edges, but we are talking a difference of about 0.5 millimeter here. It is some seriously subtle curvature, whereas the display here on the Pixel 8 Pro completely flat. Both the Pixel and the Galaxy sport a shiny aluminium frame, and as you can see, their thickness again about the same. You've got a very different design for the camera bump, however. This horizontal bar on the Pixel 8 Pro is fantastic because it means that when the phone is lying on its back on a desk or a table or whatever, it doesn't wobble around when you're poking it, unlike the Galaxy S23 Ultra. And here on the Galaxy S23 Ultra, you've got Gorilla Glass Victus 2 front and back end. And so far, a few months on, it's practically looking box fresh, just a couple of tiny wee nicks and marks. And thankfully, Google has also gone Victus 2 for the Pixel 8 Pro. So again, hopefully in a few months' time, this will still be looking practically box fresh. This Victus 2 is not only highly shatter resistant, it's also a lot more scratch resistant than the original Victus glass. So touch wood, even if you don't slap a case and a screen protector on it, it should still hopefully be looking good. Possibly not in 7 years' time when the software support runs out, of course. And both of these phones are IP68 water and dust resistant as well, so no worries if you do happen to drop them in a swimming pool, a jacuzzi, a bubble bath. Should hopefully come out the other end alright. Now you've got a small selection of colour choices with the Pixel 8 Pro, rather liking the bay blue though. But then that red Galaxy S23 Ultra, whoa! If I had to pick a winner overall for design, it would be Google's Pixel 8 Pro. I just really like the aesthetics, whereas Samsung's Galaxy S23 Ultra is just a bit, meh. It's a heftier bugger as well, 233 grams versus the 213 gram Pixel 8 Pro. And those corners do ever so slightly sort of dig into your palms. So certainly the Pixel 8 Pro with its rounded corners, slightly more comfortable to clutch. So now let's shift our focus to the software, and both of these blowers run on Android of course. But here on the Galaxy S23 Ultra, that is mashed up with Samsung's own OneUI launcher. You've got a similar basic UI on both of these handsets, however, you swipe up for the apps tray, swipe this away and you'll get the Google Discover feed. However, you will notice some aesthetical differences, especially when you drag down the notifications bar. It looks very different here on the Galaxy S23 Ultra thanks to OneUI. And lots of other little differences as well, like for instance, Google will not let you get rid of that Google search bar or the at a glance widget up top here on the Pixel 8 Pro, whereas you can delete the crap out of that search bar here on the S23. And the customization options very different as well. So for instance here on the Pixel 8 Pro, you've now got the likes of the AI wallpaper feature, different sets of themes and wallpapers. I could literally spend hours comparing the software experience on these two, but I'm not gonna, you'll be glad to hear. I've got to say though, overall, I do prefer Google's effort here on the Pixel 8 Pro. OneUI can be a little full on at times, and Samsung does try and force its own versions of Google's own apps and services onto you. So for instance, it's replaced the Google Assistant with Bixby, while you've got the Google Wallet on here, you've got Samsung Pay on here, Samsung Health, the Samsung App Store, Samsung web browsers, all kinds of Samsung stuff. Which is fine if you've used nothing but Samsung phones, so you're signed up to all of this stuff. But if you're coming from another Android phone, then it just gets messy. You just hate the doubling up of everything. And some of the Pixel exclusive features on here are just absolutely fantastic. The likes of the call screening, the new personal safety shenanigans, live captioning, the soon to be available summarize feature for articles and recordings. But anyway, I banged on about all of that in my Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro tips and tricks guide. I've also done a tips and tricks guide for the S23 series. So if you go check those out if you want a closer look at that software. Also worth pointing out, you got Android 14 out of the box with the Pixel 8 Pro. The S23 Ultra is still on Android 13, but that should be getting an update to 14 imminently. However, while Samsung is only guaranteeing 4 years of software updates here on the S23 Ultra, say only, that's still pretty good. Google is going one step further with 7 whole years of OS and security updates here on the Pixel 8 Pro, taking you right through to 2030. If you haven't had at least one apocalypse by then, I'd be very shocked. However, the Galaxy S23 Ultra also has a clever trick up its sleeve, or should I say up its bottom, in the form of the S Pen stylus. So if you're creative, you'll find this is fantastic for sketching on the go. Personally, I find it really useful for marking up PDF documents, signing things before sending them back. And the Galaxy S23 Ultra also supports Samsung's DeX service if you want to turn your blower into a makeshift computer on the go. And on the flip side, here on the Pixel 8 Pro, you've got a temperature sensor. And you can use this with the built-in thermometer app to take a temperature reading of stuff, which I'm determined to find a use for this thing, besides just checking exactly how hot my iPhone 15 Pro Max has got. And when you want to unlock your blower, well, you've got an in-display fingerprint sensor on both of these handsets. It is a basic optical scanner here on the Pixel 8 Pro, whereas Samsung has gone with an ultrasonic sensor. Ooh, super posh, la-di-da, etc. Now, I have found that ultrasonic scanner definitely works better when your fingers are a bit moist, so great news if you do a lot of swimming or if you take a lot of baths, I guess. But with both phones, you've also got a bit of face unlock action, so if your digits are really mucky, that fingerprint sensor ain't working, you can always fall back on that. It's less secure than the fingerprint sensor, however. And both the S23 Ultra and the Pixel 8 Pro support eSIM as well as physical SIM. That's particularly good news if you want to travel abroad, you just want to get a temporary 1-week SIM or whatever. As for your storage, well, with the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, you can max it out at 1 terabyte capacity. Absolutely bugger loads of space for your music, movies, Genshin frickin' Impact. Whereas here on the Pixel 8 Pro, certainly here in the UK, it maxes out at 512 gigs, but I believe in the US you can boost that up to 1 terabyte as well. There's no room for a micro SD memory card on either of these phones, and indeed on the Pixel 8 Pro there's only space for a single SIM, whereas at least on the Galaxy S23 Ultra you can chuck a couple of SIMs in there. Now, as I mentioned before, the size difference is minimal between these two handsets. You've got a 6.7-inch display here on the Pixel 8 Pro, 6.8-incher on the Galaxy S23 Ultra. It is OLED tech on both blowers, but by a different name. It's Dynamic AMOLED 2X on the Samsung versus Google's Super Actua display. You've got a similar pixel density on both. It's a 2992 by 1344 resolution on the Pixel 8 Pro, 3088 by 1440 on the Galaxy S23 Ultra. So we're talking supremely sharp Quad HD Plus visuals as long as you actually boost up the resolution in the display settings. Both support HDR10 content, and on the default display settings, Samsung as usual does pump out bolder, warmer colours, but both phones manage gorgeous deep blacks. Frankly, both will do the job if you want to edit your pics on the go, you just want to kick back with a movie, whatever. And both of these mighty flagship phones serve up an LTPO panel as well, so that refresh rate can range from almost static all the way up to 120 Hz, with the option of limiting them at 60 Hz if you want to preserve the battery life. But keep them on 120 Hz and it's a creamy, smooth, super fluid experience when you're zipping around that UI. However, the Pixel 8 Pro is the clear champion when it comes to the brightness levels, maxing out at 2400 nits versus 1750 here on the S23 Ultra. And of course the SAMI is no slouch. Even when you've got sunlight reflecting off that shiny display, you'll clearly be able to see what is going on. But wow, if you live somewhere that's super bright all of the time, you might be more swayed by the Pixel 8 Pro. And for your audio needs, where you've got a stereo speaker set up on both the Pixel 8 Pro and the S23 Ultra, let's do a side-by-side starting with the Pixel.
Beer, and nothing beer in fact, and a bloody big box of it as well. Hip hip bloody hooray. And naturally I've already had a bit of a sample of it to review it for you fine folk.
And now the S23 Ultra.
First impressions are positive, a rather pleasant mouthfeel, certainly satisfying to get your lips around.
So I would say in the speaker test, the Galaxy S23 Ultra is the victor here. Ever so slightly louder than the Pixel, but also more importantly, the clarity doesn't take a hit when you do max out the volume. And sadly, but not unexpectedly, bugger all headphone jack support on either of these mighty flagship blowers, but the Bluetooth streaming absolutely flawless. So now let's shift on to the rather beefy subject of performance, and Samsung's got the Qualcomm Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 powering the S23 Ultra, whereas Google's got the fresh new Tensor G3 as manufactured by Samsung, stuffed inside of the Pixel 8 Pro. If you're a bit of a benchmarking fan, you were hoping for some geeky stats to compare the two. Well, unfortunately, Google has probably wisely blocked the likes of Geekbench here on the Pixel 8 Pro, so it's completely knackered that one then. But certainly in a real world test, both phones hold up really well. And when it comes to gaming, well, Genshin Impact does play on both of them. On the maxed out detail settings, no worries. However, on the Galaxy S23 Ultra, gotta say it's a slightly more fluid experience. Less noticeable frame rate drops compared with the Pixel 8 Pro, where you will see the occasional wee judder. And I also noticed after about 20 to 30 minutes of gaming, the Pixel 8 Pro did start to unfortunately heat up, but not to the point where it seemed to throttle the performance anymore. And thankfully the Tensor G3 doesn't seem to heat up as much as previous models when you're just knocking about browsing the web and stuff. And both the Pixel 8 Pro and the S23 Ultra do serve up a form of gaming mode. It's pretty basic on both though. I'm talking literally, a bit of do not disturb action, recording the screen, that's about it. As for battery life, well, it is good news for both of these blowers. You've got a 5000 mAh-ish capacity battery crammed inside of both of these mighty chassis. And that longevity, absolutely excellent. I found that with both of these phones, with my SIM inside, they'll last all day long on a single charge. We're talking around 7 to 8 hours of screen on time here as well, with a good bit of camera play, music streaming in the background, certainly not conservative use. And for a proper side-by-side comparison, I did my usual video drain test. I knocked off the mobile data, I got the settings all even, I then downloaded, got into the Galaxy 3 and played it side by side, measuring the battery drain hour on hour. The Galaxy S23 Ultra consistently dropped just over 6% per hour on average, while the Pixel was slightly faster at around 7% on average. So this gave a final result of a little over 15 hours of video playback for the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra and just over 13 hours for the Pixel 8 Pro. And when it comes to recharging, Samsung ever so slightly the victor as well. You got 45 watt fast charging versus 30 watt charging here on the Pixel 8 Pro, so you will get a full charge quicker with the Sammy blower. But both support Qi wireless charging as well. So let's finish this Pixel 8 Pro versus Galaxy S23 Ultra comparison with a squint at the camera tech. You've got a very different setup on here. Let's start with the primary sensor, which is a 200 megapixel ISOCELL HP2 of Samsung's own creation on the Galaxy S23 Ultra versus a 50 meg Octa PD here on the Pixel 8 Pro, both with optical image stabilization. If you want full pro style camera controls, well, you got that on both of these, so you can mess around with the likes of the ISO levels, the shutter speed, the white balance. And both phones also give you the option of shooting in RAW format for editing on the go. However, for this camera comparison, I shot all of the photos using the auto mode in the default settings to keep things fair. I haven't used any filters, I haven't touched up any of these pics. What you see is what you get. I found that in general, the Samsung Galaxy S23 offers slightly brighter pics with bolder colours, certainly in good light. In many of my test shots, those tones were noticeably warmer and more vibrant compared with the Pixel 8 Pro's more natural output. The S23 Ultra does tend to artificially boost darker regions so they're clear and bright, which isn't ideal if you're after a moody, shadowy shot. But for everyday snaps, most people should appreciate that post-processing. And the Pixel 8 Pro can also produce slightly saturated pics that are a bit brighter than expected, certainly when you're dealing with strong contrast. You've got a portrait mode on both phones and both of them do well here, producing some slick bokeh style blurring so your subject isn't lost in a busy background. Although with the Pixel 8 Pro, an occasional portrait snap did bokeh up with soft, surprising results, while the S23 Ultra is just consistently brilliant. With the S23 Ultra, this uses a 3x zoom by default, so you'll have to get pretty far back from your subject, whereas it's a 2x zoom here on the Google, but you can pull back a bit if you don't want to get too far away. With the night mode, well, the Pixel 8 Pro is the winner for me, pumping out brighter photos with effective stabilization to keep the image sharp. And those colors are certainly more natural. On the flip side, light sources do occasionally flare up more on the Pixel pics versus the S23 Ultra. You've got a relatively sedate number of extra bonus modes here on the Pixel 8 Pro, a long exposure and an action pan, which to be perfectly frank, I would just avoid. Whereas Samsung, as usual, has stuffed as much as possible onto the Galaxy S23 Ultra. We're talking food modes, got the Expert RAW as well as Pro. You got that single take mode, which is quite good if you've got cats or kids or whatever. As for the ultra wide angle shooter, well, it's a 48 meg effort on the Pixel versus 12 megs on the S23 Ultra. It's a very similar story with these lenses versus the primary sensors as far as the photo quality goes. The S23 Ultra again likes to boost the colors, produce warmer results. But while the S23 Ultra night shots are grainier, they are also brighter and bolder. And it's very different hardware again when it comes to the telephoto shenanigans. You've got dual 10 meg snappers here on the S23 Ultra, one at 3x optical zoom, the other 10x optical zoom. As for the pixel, well, it is a solo 48 megapixel shooter with 5x optical zoom, but both phones offer optical image stabilization. Now the big difference is Samsung can zoom in up to 100 times in total, while Google hits the ceiling at 30 times. And the zoom test is about even as far as detail levels go until the 20 times zoom mark. But beyond that, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra is undeniably superior, producing crisper results. That said, the Samsung also spaffs it short when you pass roughly the 50 to 60 times zoom level, and you will certainly want to stop before the 100 times threshold. And of course, you've got the usual color discrepancies between this pair. Now, if you like to edit your pics before sharing with the world, well, Google offers the stronger AI-led tools on the Pixel 8 Pro versus the more conventional editing on the S23 Ultra. I have shown off a lot of these features in my Pixel 8 Pro camera review. Features like Best Take, you got the ability to move people and objects about the place, and some slick audio enhancements for video. But yeah, definitely check out my Pixel 8 Pro camera review and also my Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro tips and tricks guide for a closer look at all that shenanigans. As for video, well, Samsung can shoot up to 8K resolution footage, but I tested both of these phones at the far more sensible 4K resolution, where you can record footage at up to 60 frames per second. And honestly, these two manufacturers have absolutely nailed it on this front. Visuals are bright, crisp and fluid with impressive stabilization even when you aren't using the motion modes. So everything looks super smooth even if you're walking at a good pace. Audio capture is clean and clear as long as you're not shooting video in gusty conditions. And naturally you can zoom into the action and make full use of those telephoto shooters while you're filming. And here on the Pixel 8 Pro, you've got that audio enhancement tool I just mentioned, and also it's going to be getting a video boost feature, which apparently will really help out at night time, really brighten and sharpen up that footage, but it's coming in an update, so I can't test it out just yet. For your selfie shots, we've got a 10.5 megapixel selfie snapper here on the Pixel 8 Pro, slightly sharper 12 megapixel effort on the Galaxy S23 Ultra. And both pump out snaps with plenty of facial detail and respectable tones in good light. In lower light they do fall on their arse a bit, but brighter backgrounds are handled well. The S23 Ultra makes me look a bit less pallid, so I guess that one wins. And big deep breath, that is how the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra stacks up against the fresh new Google Pixel 8 Pro. As you can see, quite a lot of difference between these two. And I've got to say, I did prefer the software experience on the Pixel 8 Pro. You've got the added reassurance of the extra 3 years of software updates on there. In terms of the performance, however, slightly more consistent here on the Galaxy S23 Ultra, although at least the Pixel 8 Pro isn't as burny as previous Pixels. Got great camera tech on both, excellent battery life as well, media chops are fantastic as well, so it's a hard choice, I'm not gonna lie. Be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below, which one wins for you, the Pixel 8 Pro or the Galaxy S23 Ultra. Please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!